G'day there folks, I'm Beanie and welcome to Beanie Draws.
Maybe I'll do that. No, I'm gonna add in the last major scales. So there's a major scale here. And I'm gonna draw them looser. There's a scale here. There's a big scale here. Big scale there. And a big scale there. Then you've got the littler scales that aren't as important. There's a scale there. And a scale there. And there. And there. And then you've got the wrinkled scales. And along the mouth, the fairly famous mouth scales, which I'm sure we've all drawn, or most of us have drawn. So I'm just going to draw them now, as I see it in this picture. So, if you haven't watched any of my other tutorials, I'll just explain that these lip, I guess you call them, scales, go right along the general length of the raptor's mouth, and they they go down, down, down. Some of them are varying in their width, so some are longer, some are thicker. Then they kind of go like that. They get narrower and thicker and narrower. And how I like to do is I like to do one side and then the other side, and then just kind of bring them in together. So like so. So it lines down and then they curve at the bottom part. So they're sort of curved rectangles. Then do the same for up around here. Around here the lip scales get kind of taller and higher. And around here there seems to be little scales like so. Around here, got like a little selection of different shaped scales, but you got these kind of fairly dominant scales that I always noticed when I first watched Jurassic World. So I'm just going to draw these in. They're very different to the scales in Jurassic Park, because Jurassic Park, I'll draw it loosely. Jurassic Park had scales kind of like this for the Velociraptors. If you looked at their the way that they created them, and normally that's how I would draw a Velociraptor, but the Jurassic World Velociraptors are different. They got more sort of circular, big, and little scales. Like you got these big ones around there, then they get a little bit smaller. There's like a big one there, and a big one there, big one, and a big one, then around. Also, I'm trying to get the balance right. There's one here, and one there. Then there's a whole bunch of little ones, which, I'll just do them light, roughly, because we don't really care too much about them. We are only interested in the bigger, more dominant scales. So there's 3 or 4 that hang around that big scale. And I'll draw those ones. And there's like something there, and then there. Doesn't have to be exact. I mean, if it was a movie and you wanted, continuity, you'd do it exact, but we're just putting in loosely. It's just these big main ones that we want to worry about. Might make a few little light ones around here. And I'm just scribbling little circles, really. If I was doing a Jurassic Park Velociraptor, as I mentioned, I would have done my trick of just doing lines and squares. And there's a very dominant scale here. So dominant, in fact, that it has its own little sort of edge in it. So a few of these scales also have edges in them. Then I'll just draw it down there, because these scales are quite long. They go down right down to the bottom of the jaw. Then you got these ones. Then once they get to the chin, they get tinier and tinier. And in all honesty, I prefer the scales in Jurassic Park, just because they weren't so tiny and gecko-like. They were more sort of thick. It's all based on what you grew up on, I guess. Just going to do little tiny scales in there just to loosely. I'm just doing little curl, little I mean, I don't know how kids draw these days, but that's kind of how I used to draw scales when I was a kid. Just did it like that. I'm just doing them tiny and little, just because, you know, these ones we don't really care about. It's just these main big ones that we care about, and there's like a few biggery ones around there. But I'm just gonna make that a little bit more defined. I'm gonna make this line. I'm just gonna add in some shadows. So I'm gonna add in a line to outer edge the shadow. I'm just gonna very, very, very lightly color that in with light pressure. Just so we have the shape, but we also have the different rendering and contrast. And make it a little bit darker at the edges, just so we've got a bit of refinement. Up around here, we've got small sort of like spiky scales. There's like some big chunky ones. And around here, they are very big. Very much like the Tyrannosaurus has some big chunky scale knobs up there. Around there, we're just going to draw in some of the scales along the upper part of her brow. And then around here, just got like the little loose ones, and around here they're just loose, nothing really of importance there. Around here they're just kind of like, they're very light around this part, with the occasional little hole in them, just, I don't know, because that's what the model looks like. Up around here is there's a fair few dominant hard scales, which actually also help play out the shape of the dinosaur's head as well. So I'm just going to be drawing these. They seem to be, there's the big round one, there's like little sort of littler ones in between, but they're mostly big and platy. So I'm drawing them like so, and around here there's some bigger scales. Once you draw scales long enough, they start to, well, for me anyway, my eyes kind of cross a little bit. I'm going to draw in some of like this little spiky bits, which could almost be the starting points of feathers. I could almost say, because I noticed that blue especially has these sharp, pointy little knobs on her head, which very much remind me of the starting of proto feathers, or whatever they're called. So I'm just going to draw some of these spiky bits. I'm drawing them where I see them in the photo, so you can copy if you want. Then there's some there's actually a path of scales that kind of, okay, it starts around here from the looks of it, and then go like this. I think they're called osteoderms or something. I remember there was a conversation in one of my other videos. I think it was Torosaurus. I think is that I can't remember off the top of my head. My brain is a little bit tired. But basically, there's a lot of osteoderms. I think they called it. So I'm just putting these spiky osteoderm scales. There's some here. And there's a few up here. And some here. And there's some up here. They're not very big. They're fairly flat, but fairly prominent little knobbly things. I call them knobbly things. And there's like a whole range of little scales along here, which I'm not going to be drawing. So I'm just going to very lightly just draw some lines, which would very, very lightly, loosely indicate that there's scales there. This is the quick cheating way. I'll just bring it up to about there. I'm going to refine some of these scales. Just going to draw them lightly and loosely, just so there's a bit of balance between this side and this side. So there's like a bit of a blending of their head. And then see how I said that these lines here and here, they're not like actual hard shapes, but they're not edges. But as you can see with the use of scales, you can kind of see how you got the edge of the head, but the head actually is blended and stuck in with the rest of the neck. So now I'm just going to quickly put in some lines here. Some lines here. This is meant to be a quick drawing tutorial, but turned out a little bit more complicated than I thought, especially around here. Do that. Some lines around here. Now I'm going to get to the last part after I do some refinements. Just going to have them fairly like that, but they seem a little bit, they're random, they're organic. Draw them as such. So I'm just going to do, some of them are tall, some of them are short, some of them are tall, some of them are short for the scales. Make sure these two scales are dominant. They're very prominent, these scales. As well as this scale, make sure that scale's prominent. Make sure that scale's prominent. And also just make sure that one, that one, that one, and that one, and some of the ones along here are prominent, because those ones are they're part of her character, I suppose, so you want to make sure that those scales are very sort of... If you've got defining features of a dinosaur, or a particular dinosaur, if a dinosaur has a cut, you draw the cut. If they have specific, very dominant scales, you draw those dominant scales. So now I'm just gonna... That's right, I was drawing around here. So I'm just drawing these scales in. Around the top of the snout, and around here there's some very particular scales which are completely different. Well, around here they're somewhat similar to the old Velociraptors, but when I was trying to draw in this shape, the shape doesn't necessarily form that way. There's like some very dominant scales along here, but the edges are dominant down this part, but their connecting edges aren't as dominant, if that makes any sense. So they get a little bit thinner down here, but their bottom part is very dominant, so it's like a folded bit. There's a few little scales here. And there's a scale there, and a scale there, scale there, a few little scales there. Actually, now that I'm looking at the preview, I might actually erase some of these scales because I think I've added a little bit too much detail. Just lightly, because we want to focus on the main bits. We don't want it too heavily. So I'm just taking back some of the detail. Trying to take back some of the heaviness. I mean, that's what art's all about. You just add and subtract where you feel the fit. Around the snout is a very big round scale, and there's one here. It's kind of framed by a whole bunch of big scales, which I found different and interesting. It's very different to the original Raptor because I had a very grid. I've commented about the scales along the snout in some of my older videos on Velociraptor. But these scales are very different to that. They're big and circular. Not exactly sure how I feel about that, to be honest. In terms of Velociraptors, I've liked all of the different Raptors for different ways. I'm just going to go into a brief sort of tangent for a moment and say that I loved the original Velociraptor because, you know, it was the OG. I liked the second Velociraptors in Jurassic Park: Lost World because they were like the Jurassic Park Velociraptors, but they had like stripes, which made them look more like tigers, which gave them a bit of an African wild animal feel. I thought I liked the Jurassic Park 3 Raptors because they had a bit of a more aggressive snout. I just like the subtle changes there. They had a bit more of a they had more of an aggressive snout, which I liked. And then I liked the Jurassic World Velociraptors because they went back to the original Velociraptor vibe, but they added a bit more character. So they weren't just generic raptors, they were actual characters. But on the same token, I didn't necessarily like that they actually had their own, you know, characters, because it took away from the danger I felt. They seemed more trained and like, you know, they seemed less like dinosaurs and they seemed like, you know, pets. Not in a bad way, because I actually really enjoyed the movie, but I don't know. It just took away the wild dinosaur vibe that really won me over with Jurassic World, and instead they turned into like I don't know, zoo animals really, because I guess that's what Jurassic Park was meant to be. They're meant to be zoo animals, but the Velociraptors in Jurassic World were trained. So, well, not trained, but you know, they had personalities as opposed to just being fierce killing machines. I'm just gonna now finish off these last bits. I'm gonna add in some very light grid because that's about the only spot where there is a bit of a grid structure to the scales. Just make it quick and easy. There's some scales here that are light, and it's mainly this one here, and the scales surrounding it that are big. Here, there's actually a big scale, very big scale, very big scale, slightly small scale, and then it gets back to like, you know, the normal ones. But these scales right here, they are so big and thick that they actually look like they have armor plating on them. So I've put a little line in the middle of each of those scales to make it look like they've actually got some armor plating on it, because that's what the scales look like in the movie. They actually look quite armor plated and big and thick and chunky, which were both cool and different and surprising, which made Jurassic World its own. It made Jurassic World its own movie, and also kind of separated it from the rest of the Jurassic Park series. I'm just putting in some light little details here and there. Around here, we've got the last little bit to go, so I might as well finish it up now. Gonna put in some lines and circles around there for the snout. Some lines here. I wasn't a fan of these scales in Jurassic World. I mean, if you look at the scales, especially when I forget the names of the characters. I'm a bad Jurassic Park fan. But when they're in their little head cages, I really didn't like the details in their skin. It looked like the scales were just painted on. Like if you studied animation 3D modeling, like around here they did well, but if you look at the ZBrush or any of the patterning, like up around here, they were just lines. And they legitimately just looked like they were painted in. I didn't see how the scales would fit with the skull organically, and it didn't look like the scales actually had any conjoining elements. They just seemed like when they were making this part of the skin texture for the dinosaurs, it seemed like it was right near the end of the developing of the raptors, and they're just like, come on guys, let's get this finished, let's hurry it up. So around here they were just like, I just wasn't a fan. I didn't like the lines, but whatever. Maybe it's also because I've just grown up on Jurassic Park and the scaling looks quite different. But yeah, around there I just did not like it. Just my opinion. You don't have to agree with it. But the rest of the raptor is pretty cool. And now that's pretty much done. I'm just going to put in some light little bits of detail here. Just going to put in some light little bits of detail. Light bits of detail. And doing it this way is very impressionistic. You're not even putting in the details, you're just putting in the impression of detail, which when you observe the whole thing, it gives a bit of a more completed vibe. You got your main details, and then you got like sort of the generic implied detail to fill in the gaps. I'm just gonna give the eye a little bit more of a slant, and I might actually put a little bit of shadow here, just to give it a bit more of a real 3D vibe. Very basic. It probably doesn't even look very good, but it's just something. And actually those scales don't look at scales, actually more like that. So I'm just going to draw the little scales around the eye. Well, this video is meant to be only 30 minutes to 40 minutes, and it's now an hour. Woo! Well, it's not an hour because I'm going to be editing this, but yeah. So, sorry that this video was longer than it should have been, but if you've enjoyed my long videos anyway, and this is another video that you've enjoyed, let me know by giving it a thumbs up. I'm just going to give some quick rendering to give it a little bit more 3D-ness. But yeah, if you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you thought. I'm actually thinking that if you want to give me a suggestion on future dinosaurs and future drawings, email them to me at beaniedraws@hotmail.com. Beaniedraws, one word, @hotmail.com. That way I can have a bit more of a recorded area where all the suggestions have been given, because in the YouTube comments they tend to sort of get lost in new comments. So send your finished products to beaniedraws@hotmail.com, and also send me your suggestions to beaniedraws@hotmail.com. I can't guarantee they'll get to it right away, but I will eventually get to it, I hope. So yeah. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you liked it. And if you did, give it a thumbs up, share it around and all that good stuff, and I will catch you next time. So I'm just wrinkle little lines, just make things wrinkled. Sorry, I'm not explaining this part, but yeah. That's it for now. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll catch you next time. Cheerio for now. Okay, just a bit of extra bonus just after all this. I know people would comment if I said that this is a picture of Blue without drawing Blue's little markings on her eyes. So, just for sake of completion, I'm going to draw. I'm not going to color in, but I am going to draw her pattern markings on her face. Because otherwise, that's her character's pattern marking. Her name is Blue, so I'm just going to quickly, not perfectly, but I'm going to quickly draw in her markings, because, why not? So I'm just going to quickly put in some lines. In my running Blue video, which if I remember to, I will put in as a link or as a reminder. For that video, I did put in more detail in her actual line markings, but just because I know if I said that, I've drawn Blue, the Velociraptor, and I didn't draw her markings, I would get comments. So, and actually, I think I messed up a bit there. The only problem is erasing bits of skin details, you erase everything. So I'm just going to quickly draw in those white edges. I'm not putting in too much emphasis on their exactness, because, they were an organic pattern on a skin paint job. But I'm just, I'm giving it a bit of a random vibe, just because, that's how they looked in the movie. So I'm just going to put that in there. Maybe put a bit of shading up there, just to differentiate her markings over the rest of her body. And maybe I'll color it in very, very lightly. So just for the sake of completion, I'll just quickly color in the blue section. Very light, well, sort of lightly, sort of not. I don't want it to be too dominating. There we go. Now Blue looks actually blue. So even though it's hard to see this area of detail because of the reflection onto my camera, that is the finished Blue drawing. Included the little blue stripe just to make sure that, no one said that I forgot the most important part of Blue. So yeah, now that this is complete, now I can finish this video. So sorry it's gone so long. Now I can say thank you for watching, give it a like if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next video. So thanks for watching, I'll catch you next time. Cheerio for now.